everyone. Good morning. So again, it's wonderful to see all of you again, and thank you for joining today morning. So as usual, we would start with a short mindful breathing exercise, watching your breath mindfully. Then we can try to have good intentions by thinking, may us coming together to listen and to reflect, contemplate. May all of this become cause and conditions to open our heart, our mind, and to make progress in our spiritual path. And may it be cause and condition to actualize all the spiritual experience or realizations of the gratitude path or the lamrim within our mind stream. And to be able to achieve fully awakened state. So we can fulfill the highest purpose and well-being of all sentient beings in oneself. And by listening to the teachings, may it has a strong imprint in our mind, karmic imprint, so that we can continue to hear the teachings until we achieve enlightenment, that we can continue to study, practice the Dhamma in all lives. And may we always be helpful, beneficial, kind, compassion to all other sentient beings. May we never hurt and harm intentionally to any beings. Okay. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly by the merits I created to listen to the Dharma. May I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. Sangye Chodan Sogi Sonam Chanchu Padu Dane Dagi Shushe Gibe Sonam Yola Tenje Sangye Duba Sangye Chodan Sogi Sonam Chanchu Padu Dagi Shushe Gibe Sonam Yola Tenje Sangye Duba. So again, good morning everyone again, and from today we start a new text, one very important text. Which is composed by the same author that we discussed last time, Atisha Divankara, one of the great Indian masters, who played a huge role in spreading and flourishing the Mahayana Dharma in India, as well as in now part of the Indonesia and in Tibet, one of very influential Buddhist masters during his time. And the text that we are going to be discussing became one of the very important texts in Tibet, where it became the kind of something they rely on in their practice meditations, and many commentaries were written on this text, all different lamrim, many different lamrim commentaries, though that has been written by many different masters. They all rooted in this text. This text we are going to is the very root of all those lamrim. And lamrim means, lam means path, and rim means stages of gratitude. It's a great stages of the path of gratitude, the path. So before we actually go to the text itself, according to the Bir Kamala Shila's traditions, so it is one of the very important learning institution in Buddhist learning institution in India. There were three main learning institutions, like a big university in India. Nalanda, one of the very famous one. Bikram Shila was another very famous one. and then Odenda Puri. Those are three main kind of very well-known Buddhist learning institutions, like university in the old times, and Adishas come from this particular Bikram Shila, this there seems to be a little bit different among different scholars, whether he studied in Nalanda or not. There is that something that he was he also studied in Nalanda and later came to Bikram Shila, but whatever, he was from Bikram Shila, and he was the abbot of the Bikram Shila at that time before, when he was invited to Tibet, and so according to Bikram Shila, when they explain when they explain the teachings, there's a tradition of first, explaining the qualifications of the teachers, the author, and then the qualifications, so that by knowing who author is, then we know that the source is authentic. Through the author, then the teachings, instructions is authentic. So therefore, there is a tradition of explaining a little bit of the story of that author, and then explaining the excellent qualification of the teaching itself, so that we generate a strong kind of inspirations to study and learn from that, when what are the great excellent qualities that has, and then the actual explanation of the actual text itself, the teaching itself. And so again, I'm not going to go so details in all of them. Those who are interested, you can read the Great Lamrim, and you will find a very extensive story or biography of Atisha Dipankara, the author. But just to kind of show it, he was born in India, in a royal families, and he practiced the Dharma from the very young age, and he was well-known expert and practitioner, and by the age of 29, I think at 29, then he joined a monastery and became a monk, and then he studies with so many. He has supposed to have a 154 gurus, teachers. He studied under 154 teachers, gurus. That just show, how much he studies and how much. And not only he was great scholar, but he was also great, of course, practitioner who applies those teachings in someone, and who have cultivated the bodhicitta mind at bodhisattva, and and then, as I mentioned before, there is a story of him. He went to Indonesia, now in a part of Indonesia, by boat for many months, to receive teachings and instructions, and that, in those time, 10, 11 centuries, and study with one teacher there for 12 years, and then later part, he was invited to Tibet by one of the king in western part of the Tibet, And then he came, and then he spent the rest of his life. He passed away there, rest of 17 years in Tibet. And I think it will be nice to have a little bit of history of how this text and how he came in Tibet. This text he composed in Tibet after he came to the Tibet, after he came back to Tibet, he composed this one. And Buddhism first came around 7th, 8th centuries, and then during later Lang Dharma, the King Lang Dharma, his time, he was not supportive of Buddhism, and so during his time he destroyed and he prosecuted the followers and all of that, and so the Buddhism kind of declined. He said for 70 years, 70, Buddhism will kind of destroyed by the King Lang Dharma, so kind of Buddhism disappeared over those years. And then after some time, it started to come back, but because when you have been disappeared so long time and you don't have qualified teachers anymore, those who are qualified, many of them have passed away. There's no teachers coming because you cannot study, you cannot learn because under that kind of restrictions and prosecutions. And so when Buddhism started to come, then there was a lot of started to revive after 70 years. Then there was some confusions and impure arising, because there was teaching some pure, impure, all the confusions, some right, wrong, all kind of things. And one of the king in Western part, Lama Atisha, he was very concerned about that. He was Bodhisattva himself and very learned himself, and he was very concerned about the situations of the Dharma in Tibet. And he really was concerned, he really wanted to revive it to its purity, And then he was thinking the only way he can revive in this purity is to invite qualified master from India, where the Buddhism was still flourishing so well. And at that time, Lama Atisha was one of the teachers who was most well known in India among the Buddhist teachers and masters. So he sent, translator. There was some translator who was studying at Vigamshila in India, and so through those translators, he requests Atisha to come to Tibet and help to revive the whatever teaching practice that's left Buddhist and to flourish and establish the Buddhism again, and when Lama Atisha so he was in trying to gather a lot of offerings in the world. So he wanted to send those offerings to India and to invite Atisha. And in one of those, then he was caught in another place, caught by another king, and imprisoned him, And so the king said, he can be released if they can bring big amount of gold. And his nephew, Changju Wei, was trying to gather all the golds so that his, uncle can be released. And he took so much gold, but then the king said, the gold has to weigh as much as the whole body, and then it says it's not enough. And then Geshe Wei told his uncle and his nephew, Changju Wei said, don't worry about me releasing, I have lived my life as much as I can. My only wish is to invite the Atisha and to flourish and to revive and flourish the Dharma. So don't worry about me. Don't give the gold to the king. Take all this gold and you use it to invite the Atisha to bring him to that. And so he sacrificed his own life, and he passed away in the prisons. So he gave his life. He didn't want to spend all this gold to save his life, but instead he want those to use to invite Atisha and to flourish. So he gave up his life for that, and of course his nephew was not ready to do that, was crying, and you can't do that, and I will find gold and I will release. But he was very strong, he was saying, he was very strong and said, he has made his mind and don't worry about him. Everything's just fine, okay. And his mission should be to invite the Atisha. And so then, they parted, and later, he passed away in prison, and Changju Wei, his nephew, is the one then who invited. So Atisha was so well known, so even the translator who was studying there, they couldn't get, audience with him. It was hard to get audience with him, Atisha, because he was so. And finally, they got audience with him, and then they sent him the request from the Changju Wei, from the king of the Tibet, from the western part of the Tibet, and explain all the stories, how Geshe Wei was trying to invite and how he gave up his life in order for him to invite. And so when Atisha heard all this story, he felt, very much touched by the sacrifice that they made, the faith and devotion they have to Dharma, wanting to have such a strong, inspiration, such a strong devotions, and all the hardship they went through, and so he felt like, he cannot reject it. He felt like he cannot reject their request. And Atisha was getting a lot of pressure from from Bikram Shila, from him to not to go there, because they needed him there. They didn't want him to go because they needed him there. They needed him in India, and Bikram Shila, and he was the main master, and so they really wanted. But Atisha said, "No, I can't." After hearing all the sacrifice of all these bodhisattvas, how much they did, it will not be right for him not to at least make the effort to go there, and without going much detail, then he accepted, okay. And he was already old at that time, he wasn't so young, and imagine going in a place from sea level to some of the highest mountains, totally different language, totally different cultures, different food, everything's, totally. And so Atisha, he gave up everything, everything comfort he had, everything he gave up in order to help them because they really needed there. So he made the decision to go there. And so then after he went to Nepal and to the India, western part of Tibet, in a place called Tolung. And that was when he met the Changju Wei, And then when they first met, the Changju Wei, made a heartfelt request, explaining the situation of the Dharma in Tibet in that present time, how there is a lot of misunderstanding, how the Dharma has been polluted, and how Dharma had declined and all, and then request him to teach something that will be most beneficial to the all normal Tibetan peoples. not something very profound and high practice, but something that is more beneficial and helpful to the more general people, general public. So that was the request he made, and on the basis of those requests, then Atisha wrote this text based on many of the commentaries, based on what he has studied, and based on his own experience, and based on the needs of the people, by taking all these considerations, on the basis of all of that, then he composed this text. And then after that, this became one of the main root texts where so many different masters, teachers of different lineage have written commentaries on this text. Okay, so that is a little bit about the story of the author, Atisha Dipankara. In terms of the teaching, the text itself, it is a short, but it contains whole essence of the whole Buddha's teachings, both Sutra and Tantra. Both Sutra and Tantra. So it has the whole complete path of both Sutra and Tantra, whole complete path in such short but complete path. And then the way it is written not for academic or intellectual. The way it is written is for practitioners, easy for the practitioner to, any practitioners to practice by relying on these particular teachings and texts. So it's not written for the academic or for the intellectual, but it is written for the common practitioners. Easy for them to understand and easy them to apply and integrate, And it contains the whole essence of all the sutras of the Buddha's teachings and all the commentaries by the earlier Indian masters, such as Nagarjuna and Chandrakiri and Asanga and all there. So again, it contains all of them, It contains whole in the essence, even though it might not contain each word, but the meaning, the essence, and the meaning of whole sutra, tantra, and whole writing by great earlier Indian master will contains here that. So it contains the whole lineage of wisdom, vast, profound wisdom lineage, extensive, method lineage, and then the special instructions lineage. So all lineage, combining all lineage in one. And, he studied all those different lineage from different masters, from different masters. I have mentioned he has more than 54. He has 154 masters, teachers, under which he studies. And so then from everything that he studies, not only just studied, he tried to apply, practice, and through all of that, then he bring all in that, combining all teachings and practice into this And that is also why it becomes so popular. It becomes so popular. You know, so that is a little bit about the text itself. You know, and then actually, when in terms of explaining the text or any teachings, then there is how to listen, how to teach, and the actual way. And again, we don't need to go all detail. You can study in lamrims. There is more detail how to listen properly, and for the listener, and for the teacher how to teach properly, and then then actually studying or learning or listening the teachings, and then once you listen, then you try to apply, integrate as much as possible in your practice. Okay. So then we go to the actual text itself. So then there is the titles. In the Sanskrit, the title, Bodhipada Pradipam in Tibetan Chandulam Yudome, and in English, Lamb of the Path to Enlightenment. So that is the title, and so the Lamb of the Path to Enlightenment is like, in the dark when you need to walk on the path to your house, your destiny, you need the light to show you the path so that you don't lose the path and go somewhere wrong. In the same way, these teachings and this practice is like a lamp that clear the darkness of misunderstanding, the darkness of not understanding, misunderstanding, and clearing all that, and then explaining the correctly, unmistaken path to enlightenment. And not only the path to enlightenment, is the complete path to enlightenment. The complete path to enlightenment. Some text scriptures, even they explain path to enlightenment, that sometimes they don't have the complete path. Maybe sometimes the text is more based on just the wisdom path and doesn't have the method so much. And some of them just the method and not that much wisdom. So, but this one, and sometimes there is just the tantric path and not the sutra path. Sometimes there is the sutra path, not the tantric path. But this one has all of them. That's short, but it combines all whole path. So complete whole path. Okay. And then next is homage to the youthful Bodhisattva Manjushri. So this homage is paid by the translators, not so by the translators. When they translate from Indian language to the Tibetan language, then that is when they pay the homage. And by paying homage to Manjushri here, through that homage, we know which there are three kind of, all the Buddha's teaching can be kind of categorized into three categories, what we call three baskets, or pitaka, and those basket or teaching on the rules and regulation of Vinaya, and those teachings on, meditative concentrations and the method, and then those teachings on wisdom path, and so sometimes you call three pitaka or three baskets of the teachings. And this one, Manjushri, means this belong to the part of pitaka or the basket of the wisdom. Okay. The earlier Dharma kings, in Tibet, I think they really have a lot. They have made rules and regulations for all when they were translating. So just by reading the homage, you know which this text belong to. You know, if it is belong to Vinaya, you have to pay homage to the Buddha. If it is the wisdom, you pay homage to Manjushri. If it belong to the method, then you homage to someone. And just by that homage, you know which this particular text, whatever text it is, you know which part of the basket of Pitaka it belongs to. You know, I think those are the one thing. And another rules when they made, you know, is that the translator, everyone has to use same terms, you know. Of course, among the translator, they have discussions and decide, and then you cannot, if each translator cannot use different terms, you know. The problem in the West now is every translator is using their own terms. It becomes very complicating for a lot of practitioners, you know. You know, for one word, 20 different translators might be using different 20 terms. And sometimes you are not aware what they are talking about, even though you know the subject, but the term is you have never heard that terms. And that makes much more complicating. But in Tibet, the kings made the rules that everyone should use, you know, same terms. Everyone has to use them, so that makes more easy. And then also, you know, one of the things is when they translate from the Indian language to the Tibetan language, they must have two translators, one Tibetan translator and one Indian translator. One Indian translator who know Tibetan and one Tibetan translator who know the Indian language. And because they come from different, you know, language, even though they both are expert in both languages, but then they have their different background from the, and so that helps a lot. So all has to be translated by two translators and you see at every of those translations at the end, you see the Indian translator and Tibetan translator, the name of that, you will always see that. And so it becomes more accurate. You know, it becomes, instead of one person translating it has to be two translators and from one very, even though they are both expert in both language, but one Tibetan language, Tibetan translator, one, you know. So those are some of the rules that the kings made, and I think it has it makes it much more easier for everyone, you know. Nowadays, you know, we when there's no rules, then our ego take over and think, you know, my term is better than your terms, you know. And other one says, you know, my term is better than your terms, you know. So we cannot come to some kind of conclusions, and it creates much more difficult for the readers and listeners, because, you know, and so anyway, so that just came in my mind, you know. And then the actual text start from here, the next one, paying homage. And that one is the way Atisha, his own writing start from here, his own writings, you know. So at the very beginning, as you might be aware, all the writings, all the texts, you know, they always start with homage, you know. And it is also not, these are like, you know, for us, instruction and teachings. The teaching and instructions is that when you engage in any kind of virtuous act, any important act, always remember the three jewels. Always remember the three jewels. You know, pay homage to those holy objects. Remember them and pay homage to them and get their blessings whenever we start anything, and that is all master, all Indian master, Tibetan master, all of them, whenever they compose any text, anything, they will always start with that homage. So same here, the homage paid here. And the object of homage might be different, as I said, sometimes it might be a homage to the Buddha, sometimes it might be a homage to the different deities, different Buddhas, sometimes it can be a homage to the Buddha Dhamma Sangha, sometimes it can be a homage to the teaching, sometimes it might be a homage to the compassion, bodhicitta, but there is always starting with the homage. Okay, so here is starting homage with a great reverence. I prostrate to all the victories one of the 3 times. So paying homage to the Buddhas of 3 times, all the Buddhas of 3 times, all the enlightened, those who have overcome all the obscurations, all the afflictive emotions, all the obscurations, and those who have actualized all the positive qualities, all the positive qualities, all the positive inner qualities, excellent qualities. So those who have no more delusion, no more obscuration to overcome, and there is no more to learn, no more to, because they actualize all the positive inner excellent qualities. So those are the victorious ones of 3 times, and to their Dharma. And then to the Dharma, the teachings, the scriptures, the teaching that explain how to achieve the fully enlightened state. Okay? How to achieve that fully enlightened state. The scriptures, the teachings that explain. As well as by relying on those teachings and the scriptures, then after putting into the practice, once you put into the practice and engage in the practice of the practice, such as the training, 3 high training, the training of, moral discipline, mental concentration, wisdom, those are again, Dharma. And through that training, then you actualize those inner quality within yourself, your own wisdom, your own shamatha, your own strong moral disciplines. And those are the actual Dharma, the actual refuge, actual protectors, your own inner Dharma, your own inner spiritual realizations. That is the true Dharma, that is the true refuge, that is the true protections that can protect you from sufferings and other problems. So paying homage to the Dharma and to the members of the Sangha. And the members of the Sangha are those who have actualized that Dharma within themselves, the Arya Sanghas, those who have actualized the wisdom, realizing the reality in themselves. Or those, so those Arya individual members, the Arya Bodhisattvas and Arya, those who are on the path of Sarvaka and solitary realizers, all of those, and also those as a collectively, as a group, as a community who aspire to cultivate those wisdom within themselves, the Dharma within themselves, even though they have not developed the Dharma within themselves at this point, but they have the aspirations and they have the dedicated towards that path. Those who have the aspirations and who have dedicated their path so that they can actualize that Dharma within themselves, the wisdom within themselves, and those are the Sanghas. So those are the one who can inspire and support and help the Dharma practitioner, helping each other, supporting each other, inspiring each other, encouraging each others. Those are the sanghas, So paying homage to the Buddha Dhamma Sangha. So before he started writing it, he said first he would pay homage to the Buddha Dhamma Sangha. Okay. And then after paying homage to the Buddha Dhamma Sangha, what he's going to do is, and then he explaining what he's going to do, and then that is what he urged by my good student Changju Wei, I shall elucidate the lamb for the path to enlightenment. So then he's saying he's going to explain and clarify these particular teachings or the path or the text, the lamb of the path to enlightenment, and it has been urged or requested by the good student Changju Wei. So Changju Wei was the nephew of Ishi Wei, who passed away in prison, and both of them, it is a good students in the sense that Changju Wei was a bodhisattva, someone who had cultivated bodhicitta mind, so he was strongly good-hearted, compassionate, who was very concerned about the well-being of the sentient beings, and concerned about the Dharma, which is the root of the happiness of sentient beings, and not only just concerned, but fully dedicated towards that, fully dedicating his life towards that, in order to preserve whatever Dharma that is left, whatever little pure Dharma that is left, trying to preserve them, and then those Dharma that has been polluted, trying all to revive them to its purity, and trying to, spread the Dharma, the pure Dharma, as much as possible. So fully dedicated towards that, someone who has totally dedicated their life for Dharma and for sentient beings, So that is why Atisha here make that, good students here is for that purpose, the good here, meaning his good heart. He was, of course, his student and disciple, but he has this incredible good heart of loving kindness, compassion, bodhicitta mind, and total dedications towards the Dharma and the sentient beings, well-being of sentient beings. So here I shall elucidate. And so through this writing, he said he's going to clarify what might have some misunderstanding at that time in Tibet, about the Dharma. Because, as I mentioned, because Dharma has declined over 70 years, they were not allowed to practice, study, and all of that. So, with that time that it has declined, and it has kind of been, when it started to come, it has been polluted, misunderstood, mistaken, and so here through this writing, he's saying, he's going to clarify many of those misunderstandings, those which have not understand, trying to clarify them, those who have misunderstood, trying to clarify them, elucidate them, clarify them, and those who have remained pure, trying to, improve it and increase it and maintain it. So then the path itself, so the main topic of this writing text is going to be, the practice of three scope or scope or capacity of three kind of human beings, sentient beings, so that is where understand there are three types of individuals, okay? And those three individuals, so here, lesser, middling, and superior. And this kind of differentiating as a lesser and middle and superior is not based on physical power or physical strength. It's based on the individual's mental capacity or mental scope, with what kind of goal they have, what kind of intention, motivation they have towards their goal. Some might have smaller goal, some have more bigger goal, and some have much more bigger goal. Okay? So from that mental state, so that is where, in other words, maybe if I might be able to put it more simple way, every sentient beings wish and desire happiness. And we pursue, all sentient beings pursue towards that happiness. Okay? Animal, human beings, all other form of sentient beings. No one wants suffering. No one desires sufferings. Everyone wish, everyone wants happiness. And we all strive to achieve that happiness. So then, that being the case, that being the kind of the pursuit of the whole sentient beings, and that being the right of all sentient beings to be happy. Then, when we talk about happiness, there can be many levels of happiness. Like everything's, there can be many levels of that. Compassion can have many levels of compassions. Anger can have many different levels of anger. Same way, happiness or suffering, there can be many different levels of sufferings. There can be many different happiness. And so there are many different levels of happiness. And based on that, then there is a sense of pursuing for particular happiness. Some pursue towards certain happiness. The others pursue for more higher happiness. And then there are individuals, sentiments who pursue for even more happiness, higher level of happiness. So first of all, there are individuals who pursue for only happiness of this life. Okay? Who pursue for only happiness of this life. The scope of happiness is all about the happiness of just this life, nothing more than that. And in order to pursue that happiness, just the happiness of this life, and if you engage in any practice, any method or any practice to achieve that, to pursue that, from Katamba traditions, they say that is not a real true practitioner. Yeah, and so then there are those, who might be pursuing about this happiness, but also not only this happiness, but happiness of future as well. Do you get it? Who are concerned with this happiness, but not only concerned with this happiness, but also who are concerned and pursue for the happiness of future life. So those who pursue the happiness of future life are the individual of lesser being. Okay? Who pursue the happiness of future to have a better life next time, more happy life next time. Maybe next life, more healthy, more wealth, all better, So who doesn't only think this, but who are preparing for better futures, better life, and happiness of future better life. So that is lesser. Then there are those individuals who are not concerned and who are not interested or attached, maybe interest, who are not attached to happiness of this life, or neither even the happiness of future life, but who want to achieve the happiness of full liberation, total freedom from the samsara. So that happiness, the happiness of full liberation or total liberations from the whole samsara. And those who pursue towards that with that kind of intentions and by following certain path, method, those are the individual of being of middle scope. And then there are those individuals who are not even interested and attached to even individual liberation and individual freedom, but who inspire and who are interested and who put effort to achieve the ultimate happiness of fully enlightenment, so that they can be so they can fulfill the greatest help and benefit to all sentient beings. In order to fulfill all the purpose and all the well-being of all sentient beings, the wish to achieve the ultimate happiness of fully enlightenment. That is the individual or the practitioners of superior scope. So therefore, these three individuals they're talking about is based on, based on the intentions or the aspirations to achieve different level of the happiness. And in order to achieve that different level of happiness, pursuing those happiness with a different practice, method, way to achieve those happiness. So that, and within the leisure path, or within those who pursue for the leisure, then there can be, who are not attached to this happiness at all, but who are working for the happiness of future lives. And then there are those who are both working for this life and also happiness of future life. And then there are those who are only working for happiness with just this life, So again, you can see different individuals pursuing different kind of happiness, different level of happiness, And from the Kadamba's traditions, if you read the Kadamba traditions, the teachings, they will say if you are attached and you are only pursuing just this happiness, then it is not true practitioner, Dharma practitioner. True Dharma practitioners should be more than that. True Dharma practitioners should aim more than just the happiness of this life, you know. On a minimum level, you should pursue for the happiness of future life. Even you cannot pursue for the happiness of liberation, happiness of fully enlightenment. At least that is kind of minimum, you know. So, and as even one of the great Sakya master, as he met, you know, if you are attached to this life and the happiness of just this life, then one is not true Dharma practitioner. As you know, your goal become very limited, very narrow. You know. And so therefore, I shall set out a system of classification in which their respective characteristics are made completely clear. And so he kind of explained there are three levels of individuals with that kind of mind, lesser, middle, and then he's going to explain more detail on each of them. What does it means, the individual with lesser scope, what it means, middle scope, or the capacity and great scope capacity, and what is the practice and the method, the way to lead to each of those states and those happiness. And so that is where, okay. Yeah. And when you talk about happiness, even within this happiness, you know, even for those who work for only the happiness, just this life, even that there can be a different level. Those who work for, you know, only for sense pleasure in this life, physical comfort and sense pleasure, and those who go a little bit beyond that, just sense pleasure, but who try to achieve, you know, mental peace, you know, inner mental peace, mental happiness, you know. So again, there can be many different levels. So then in terms of the lesson here, now he go more details and clear. Know that those who by whatever means, so your whatever means, whatever method, whatever practice, you know, whatever way, exclusively seek mere mundane pleasure, you know. So who seek only ordinary mundane pleasure of this life, you know, of samsara, for their own benefit, not for the benefit of others, but for their own individual benefit, are the inferior individuals. And, you know, so those are the inferior individuals because, you know, they only work for their own, only their happiness, not for the happiness of others, for their own benefit, only for their own benefit, not only for their own benefit, but to achieve very ordinary, samsaric, mundane pleasure, you know. That means we have not been able to utilize our potentials, full potentials, because we have much more high potential to achieve more than that, you know. We have much more potential to achieve much more higher than that. But if you only seek that and if you only work for that, you are limiting your own potentials. We are limiting our own potentials. And so therefore, there is lesser beings, in terms of the being itself. Uh, mm, I think maybe I might have made a mistake when I was saying, those who seek ordinary mundane pleasure of samsara, of future life, of future life is the lesser being, or the future lives, who are um, who are not attached to only happiness of this life, but who are, seeking the happiness of future life, and only for just their own benefit. Those are the practitioners of the lesser beings. And those are the practitioner of lesser beings, and the practice, the means, the method that lead to that to achieve that happiness is the practice of lesser beings, or lesser scope, or lesser capacities. And so what are the means? What are the means? What are the practice? What is the practice? What is the means? What is the method to achieve the happiness of future life? Um, mm. And then that include all the practice of, precious human rebirth, meditation on precious human rebirth, meditation on impermanent in general, especially death impermanent, meditation on, suffering of lower rebirth, meditation on refuge, and meditation on karma, law of cause and effect. Those are the practice. Those are the means. Those are the way to achieve that happiness, the happiness of future life within the samsara, within the samsara. So through those practice, one can have better future life, where you have better conditions within the samsara, within the samsara, where you would have all the better conditions, where you could have a healthy life, long life, less less illness, less problems, where you have better conditions for your livings, you don't have the struggles, where you don't have much struggles to make your livings, where you have easy access to all the conditions that make your life much more easier, where you have, more better reputations, more fames, all that as an ordinary being that you seek, everything that as ordinary beings, what you seek, what we seek in ordinary beings is wealth, reputations, praise, good health, wealth, good families, good friendships, all of that is what we seek as ordinary. So through those practice, then one can achieve all of that within the samsara, and so those are the practice, the means that lead to that. Through meditation on precious human rebirth, you recognize, how precious it is, how much potential one has. And once we recognize how precious it is and how much potential we have, we want to utilize that potential. We don't want to waste that potentials. And therefore, with that, then we direct our energies towards the practice, our spiritual practice, Dharma. And through meditations on impermanent, especially death impermanent, we recognize this precious life, and this precious life with so much potential does not last forever. It will come to an end at a certain time. And therefore, not only we want to utilize it, make it meaningful, and take most from this opportunity, but we want to do that before the death comes. Before the death comes, So without postponing it, saying tomorrow, next week, next month, next year, trying to utilize every moment, present moment that is in your hand, because you don't know whether tomorrow is in your hand or not. We don't know whether next week is in our hand or not. We don't know next month is in our hand or not. We don't know next year is in our hand or not. Only what we know is the moment, the present is in our hand at the moment. And so therefore, utilizing this very moment to make it meaningful, useful, by directing our precious time, precious moment in present towards our spiritual practice, towards our Dharma practice. And when the death comes, if it's really end of everything, maybe we don't have to worry so much about that. But, at least from Buddhist point of view, the life continue. Your consciousness continue taking a new form of life. Whether you believe it or not, that is one thing. It's all up to us individually. Believe it or not, why we believe it, why we don't believe it, what are the reasons to believe, what are the reasons not to believe, by studying, learning more about those things, if you believe, why you believe it, what are the reasoning, what make you believe it, and what do you find that something that make you believe it. You might have your direct experience, some people have their experience or remember their past, so vividly, so clearly. Some people, through their meditations, they are able to see things that they have not been able to see before, in their meditation. Through meditation, they are able to have access to their past, and they are able to see it. So with their own experience, their direct experience, they come to that kind of belief because they have those experience that is open through their meditations and able to see that. And, and then there are others who believe because even though they don't remember, or even though they don't have that meditation to have access, but they have seen people around them where it was so clear. It was so clear. They have seen people around them, among their family members, friends, others, where the children's, remember so clear, and what they did, what they said, and all of that, with all this, they don't have any doubt because that is what they have experienced, even not directly themselves, but someone around them so closely enough that it is. And then there are others, through different reasoning and logic that you find in the Buddhist and others some other non-Buddhist writings, on that. There are many different reasoning and many different logics why the mind continues, and even the body stop, but why the consciousness continue and take new form of life. So there are all this. So based on those reasoning, based on those logics, based on those, then again someone had that kind of come to that kind of understanding, that kind of acceptance, that kind of belief of that. And for many of people who doesn't have any of those, understanding, experience, them to kind of believe, so I guess you don't believe it, but also it's important to, you don't have to believe it, but it is important to keep your mind open. We don't know anything after this life. We don't know anything after that, and more things we are learning with the technologies, a lot of things that seems impossible 50 years ago seems possible. 50 years ago, if someone says there's life in another planet apart from this world, everyone thinks you must be crazy. But now, even within the science community, there are coming possibility of being life outside of this world. The possibility of being alive outside of this world. So there's so much unknown what is outside of this planet, outside of this world, outside of this planet. There's so much unknown about that. So, so at least, we don't have to believe it, neither we have to completely reject it, but kind of keep open-minded, possibility of either way. And through that, you might be able to, see, and who knows, it might open your mind, might not open. But so anyway, I don't want to go in all the detail, but at least from Buddhist point of view, the theory, the idea is that the consciousness continue and take new form of life, and then what kind of life we take, for ordinary beings we have no control. For highly realized beings, they have control. They can decide, they can make choice, to come wherever they want to come, whichever family they want to come, which place, which families, where they want to come or not come, all they have. But for ordinary beings who doesn't have that control over their mind, control over their control over their life, mind, and control over their karma, then you just follow the karma, the cause and conditions, depending on what karma we create in this life, depending on how we live our life, whether we live more positive, or whether we live our life more negative, more, so depending on our actions to the body, speech, and mind, and depending on our actions or karma, depending on the karma is that things that we create through our actions, body, speech, and mind. And depending on that, whatever is more strong, in generally speaking, whatever is karma is more stronger, the result will be that if you have a stronger positive karma, the result will be more higher, better rebirth. If your karma is more, negative karma is more stronger, then as a result of that strong negative karma, that strong negative karmic force, the next rebirth will be, more, more, unfortunate, more problem, more suffering, so in one of the lower rebirth, and if we take a rebirth and lower rebirth, then not only the suffering can be much more lasting and much more painful, but the opportunity to practice the Dharma will be very limited. The opportunity to practice the Dharma will be, limited. The practice to improve our spiritual path will be very limited. And because of that, the opportunity to improve our karma will be also limited. Then it becomes much more harder to release from that lower rebirth, one, and to continue to practice Dharma becomes much more difficult, much more. And so by meditating on the karma and by meditating on lower rebirth, then, we make a strong effort, to stop creating any kind of those strong negative karma that could force us to take in the rebirth in one or lower rebirth, and so that through that meditation on that, and you try to generate strong, by meditating lower rebirth, the suffering of lower rebirth, and a strong wish to not wanting to be in that kind of, to be born or to take a rebirth in such state. And the way to stop from taking such a rebirth is by changing our karma, by changing our actions, from negative to positive, and going to the refuge to the Buddha Dhamma Sangha, and having gone to the refuge of the Buddha Dhamma Sangha, then, keeping the precept of the refuge. And the way to keep the precept of the refuge is, trying to live your life according to the 10 virtues actions by refraining from 10 non-virtuous actions. And if we can do that, then, if we can live our life refraining from 10 non-virtuous actions and engage in 10 virtuous actions, then definitely we will create less and less negative karma, and we will create more and more positive karma. And when your positive karma is very strong, by the force of that strong karma, you will have better rebirth, better condition to practice the Dharma, better condition to walk on our spiritual path, and less suffering, more happiness, and continue to walk on our Dharma, life after life, better and better, improving better and better, having better and better conditions, and then eventually achieve the full enlightenment, then eventually achieving the full enlightenment. And so that is the practice of leisure scope or capacity of the leisure individuals. Okay, so I think for today maybe we will kind of stop here. Does anyone have any questions, comments, or questions?
Geshe Aaron has a question.
Yes, please.
I just had a quick question about the title in Tibetan, because I noticed that there seemed to be like 2 titles. And I was curious of what the second title was.
Was there 2 titles in this one? Okay, I think, okay. It is same, but second one is what you call phonetic.
Oh, okay.
So the way it is spelled in Tibetan. So if someone has studied phonetic, then you will know how the Tibetan is spelled.
Okay.
But you can't make the exact word when you read that because it's phonetic, And so the way you pronounce it, the way the first one, Changjuk, Lamki, Doma, and it is the same. Payada Cha, Changase Chang, and Chuk, Lamki, and Sakataga, Garadada, Dada Dona Dun, Doma. So it's a Tibetan way of spelling it, So it is the same title. It's just the phonetic.
Okay, thank you.
My pleasure. Any other questions? Then we will do the dedications. May all living beings everywhere plagued by the suffering of body and mind obtain an ocean of happiness and joy by virtues of my merit. May no living creature suffer, commit evil, or ever fall ill. May no one be afraid or be belittled with a mind weighed down by depressions. May the blind see form and the deaf hear sound. May those whose bodies are worn with toil be restored, finding repose. May the naked find clothing, hungry find food. May the thirsty find water and delicious drink. May the poor find wealth, those who with sorrow find joy. May the forlorn find hope, constant happiness and prosperity. May there be timely rains and bountiful harvests. May all medicine be effective and wholesome prayer bear fruit. May all who are sick and ill quickly be free from their ailments. Whatever disease they are in the world, may they never occur again. May the frightened cease to be afraid, and those bound be free. May the powerless find power, and may people think of benefiting each other. For as long as space remains, for as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain to dispel the miseries of the world. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you. And have a wonderful day. Thank you. Thank you.